All right. So, hey, Polly. Um, Today I have a very special friend with me, and he's a second year. He was a second year in the program that I'm studying right now. So I was wondering if you could begin with telling a little bit about yourself and some of your experiences. Probably it would be really nice. Yeah.
Sure. So yeah, my name is Pauli. In Finnish, we say Pauli. I'm a Finnish American. I was born and raised in the US in around Washington, D.C., but my parents are from Finland. And then I came back to Finland for my military and service because it's compulsory here. And then I went to Taiwan and I was there for 11 years doing some missionary work and then studying Chinese. And then I ended up staying there to do my bachelor's degree. And then married a Taiwanese, had two kids, and so I'm Taiwanese now in my heart. And so I'd been studying educational psychology and counseling there in Chinese, and then I also worked there as an English teacher because that's what you do in Asia, and you speak English, you teach English. And so uh, yeah, I was teaching English there for actually the reason I became a teacher before when I was only 19, I went to China and I went to the kind of rural areas in China and I saw how tired the high school students were. They would be studying 6, 7 days a week and they had piles of books on their tables and I just thought that this is incredible. That how can students work so hard? It's like they're in a it's like they're in a prison. And when I saw that, I was like, I want to bring hope to kids. And so I was thinking maybe I'll be a teacher and I can bring something different to these kids and
Yeah.
bring a sort of hope to
Yeah.
them. And then that's why I studied in Taiwan. And then I taught English there in Taiwan for a couple of years. And then I didn't like the
Mhm.
Taiwanese education system so much. So I decided I want to come back to Finland and get my master's in education and see how Finland does it.
Yeah, yeah. There's something in like this was very fascinating for me that you being a Finnish American going to Taiwan and learning Chinese and then studying a bachelor's program in Chinese. I think that's just I mean I think well even right now even I myself being in the process of learning Swedish. So um how I find it very interesting that you are making an effort. Like I think this was a major learning for me as well. I think like even right now I can see that because here in Finland, like especially with the program, although English is spoken, people do know English, but
Mm.
it's the language. Like if you know the language, you always have that advantage. I think I feel so. And but I mean, I would still want to know like how was it like? I think although you have mentioned it a couple of times, but that you learned the language and then you did the bachelor's program, like how was the transition like actually?
Well, I mean, I think anybody who's speaking English as a second language and then studying in English, they understand that pain. And there's actually a lot of foreigners who come to Finland and they study in Finnish. And that's a lot of respect because Finnish is not an easy language to learn, or Swedish. Well, Swedish is a little bit easier,
Mhm. Yeah,
but
yeah,
I had self-studied Chinese with just textbooks and people into like a B1 level. And
yeah.
then I took a test and then the real lesson for because they say that if you want to learn like spoken language, then it takes 2 years. But if you want to learn an academic language, especially for English, it takes five to
Yeah.
seven years. And so the
Oh,
first year of my university was just pain, just pure
oh, oh
trying to read
my.
Chinese textbooks and trying to understand the way that professional Chinese is written. That
Yeah.
was and so the first year I was just exhausted and I hadn't studied for a long time and I was taking statistics in Chinese and I was just dying. It was terrible. But then the teachers were so friendly and so lovely and they wanted me to succeed, so they were really trying their best to help me, and so I really appreciated that. So
Wow.
I mean they say in Taiwan that the 最美的风景是人, like the most beautiful landscape in Taiwan is the people. The most beautiful thing to see,
Mm.
well, because the people are so friendly and so
Yeah.
lovely. and so
yeah,
they help.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, speaking of language, I actually will, as our discussion for today is about how culture and like I think I did mention in one of my blog as well, how culture and history plays a significant factor in determining how a system, and because we're talking about the education system would function. So I mean, maybe like maybe if you could, if you would you like to start sharing about looking at the Finnish culture and the education system? Maybe I can share a bit about the Indian culture and education system. So yeah,
Yeah, let me first share the reason I wanted to come to Finland to do my master's in education was because in Taiwan I noticed how hard the students were working. Even I was teaching these first graders English, and I remember they were talking that, oh yeah, I have a big test coming up, and I was just thinking, you
yeah,
have a test and you're in first grade, and they'd be doing
yeah,
work. And this I worked in also an after school language center, so they were coming after school to me, and then
yeah,
after the
yeah,
language center they'd go home and they'd go write their homework. And so I was just thinking, this sucks.
yeah, yeah,
Like I don't want to see students like
yeah,
this all this rote memorization and then this huge competition that they have.
yeah,
And
yeah,
in grade 1 to grade 4, grade 3, they're still quite happy in elementary school. But then once they get to
mm,
grades, then the stress comes because they have to
yeah,
start talking to middle schools, and then
yeah,
middle school is just hell already, and then
yeah,
the test into high schools, and then high school is another hell. And I was just like, this is
yeah,
terrible.
yeah,
And so when I
yeah,
came to
yeah,
Finland because my
yeah,
parents are Finnish, and they wanted to
yeah,
raise us with Finnish standards, and so
mm,
the
mm,
freedom here is so big. Like they want you to learn life skills and to learn things on your own.
yeah.
And so actually my brothers and I, we were all homeschooled in America because my parents didn't like the American school system so much.
Oh,
So they gave us a
okay,
choice. They said,
okay,
hey, every year they gave us a choice, and they said, hey, if you want to study at home with us, you can study at home. If you want to go out and study in American school, you can go. And every year we'd always choose to stay home. And we'd always be done
okay,
with schoolwork in 3 or 4 hours. And then the rest of the time we could just do whatever we wanted. We could explore, we could build Legos, we could go for a hike.
nice,
And so
yeah,
and so, like, you can see that that was huge. I have four older brothers. My first brother, he's got a PhD in social psychology, and he's a researcher. My next
yeah.
brother has a master's degree in engineering management. The next brother is a professional photographer, but has a master's degree in music psychology. And then the next brother, he was a master's degree in crisis management. And right now, yeah, he's so it's just like,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
it's freedom, it really works. And so
yeah,
and I noticed that the Finnish education system is really focused on life skills. And they
mm,
always talk about this learning to learn.
mm,
And like they have these things called transversal competencies. So
mm,
they're
yeah,
able to
yeah,
be able to know how to do things. And
yeah,
something I really appreciate is that the Finnish system really focuses on the human being aspect. I remember I was doing my teaching practice, and one of the students came in late, and he didn't really say sorry or anything. Like he was like 15 minutes late to this class, and I was like, "What the? Who are you?" In Taiwan, the student would knock on the door and then he'd
no,
bow. And, so sorry, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. But then here it's just like, oh hey, and they call me by my first name here. They're like, hey, Pauli. I'm like, who do you think you are? I am to be respected. But here it's just
yeah,
like, yeah. And I talked to the teacher afterwards. I was like, why, what is that? And then she said that,
yeah,
yeah, in the
mm,
West, especially in Finland, they understand that the students are also human beings, and you
yeah,
believe and you trust that they had a good
yeah,
reason to be late,
yeah, yeah,
especially when they're in high school because they have to take responsibility for their own lives. So you have to
yeah,
let them take responsibility. And I was just
so,
thinking, that's so different. So,
yeah,
but
yeah,
that freedom and
yeah,
that value
yeah,
for the human being and the individual, that was really a big
yeah.
uh, shock for me, I think, when I came here. What about you? I'm curious.
Yeah,
Is India the same
and
as Taiwan?
I mean, completely, I think totally different and opposite, and I think very much relatable to because you do have an experience of being in the Asian context, like the first thing that you mentioned of how students are stressed, like people are stressed about when it comes to exams, especially the concept of whole exams. And even I was reflecting on, because we had discussed on how our system and culture would function, like the whole idea of competition being so much prevalent in Asian countries. And but why again there is competition? It forced me to think that way. Like, if you would take our country, like for instance, in the India's country has a population of about 1.4 billion people. So when you have so many people and then managing the system with so many people, it's not really easy.
Mm,
So it unfortunately it becomes like a rat race where at the end of the day, yes, we want to make sure that everybody gets access, but if you have to make sure that there is access for everyone, but you don't have that many resources, you have limited resources. So you have to figure out ways of how who can then get access then. So then that's how the concept of examinations come in. Then you have entrance exams, then you have to write, and then whoever aces the exam gets an entry into the system. So
mm,
that is an unfortunate reality that we live in. But also at the same time, like if I look at competition in a positive way, also it does give me a motivation. Also, that okay, I have to work. I have to work in a better way. Like if I don't work, maybe I won't get it. So, but yes, at the end of the day, it is also important to remember that having competition to some extent is okay, but not that so that a person breaks down and then okay, I can't do this anymore. I think that is also something important in education to remember. Like, you have some competition to maintain the motivation level, but not that it hampers one's mental health as well.
mm.
So that's very much I can say very much prevalent. And
I
we're talking about culture. Yeah,
have one comment.
yeah, yeah,
I had a Taiwanese friend who moved to Finland. She's been here like for like 5 years, and she said something really funny. She said that because these high competition countries like Taiwan, China, India,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
it's really good to be in these high competition countries if you're smart. So if you're
Mm,
and you're smart, then you're
yeah,
getting a really good job, and it challenges you to be even smarter and to work harder and to do well.
yeah,
And so if you're
yeah,
smart, it's actually not so bad. But if
yeah.
you're not smart, it's best to come to Finland because they'll take care of you and they'll make sure that you succeed. And so, like, yeah, Finland is really focused on everybody succeeding and this equality.
Exactly.
So few people,
Yeah,
they can make sure that everybody can
yeah,
succeed. They really
yeah,
focus on
yeah,
the quality instead of the quantity of each.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, this is a real dilemma for me as well, because when we work in education, like yes, we want to make sure that everybody, there's this Finnish term called samalta vivalta, where everybody gets equal opportunity. So it's there's this book that we had read, written by Possi Solberg, and but also like I get, well, ideally it's very good, like you are moving together. We are anyone, any child, even with special needs child, can we are all going together. But then I think I start I feel sympathy for those people, like who have like really good potential, like who can do way much better than what they are doing right now. So
mm,
at that time it becomes like, oh no, okay, so so I think that's something for all of us to probably think and figure out of how to work.
mm,
But coming to the Asian culture, I think I do have to say that I have started reflecting a lot after coming to Finland. It's like there's this one of my senior colleague, like the organization where I was working in previously. Um, that I was in conversation with the director of that organization recently, and then he told me, Lois, the distant view always helps you, because it's only when you move away from that place you start looking at that place in a different way. Like, so I've started looking at the Indian context in a different way, like ever since I moved here. And I do have to say, I think one thing that I totally love about Asian culture is the whole idea of being collective. Like, yes, there are advantages to have. You always focus on being in a group. You always have someone. So well, I wouldn't say that something is good or bad, but it's like I have been born and brought up in that culture of, where all the relatives are together, your entire family is together. There is always someone around. So and then when you immediately move to a place like Finland, where it's individualistic, so you are on your own. You have to be alone. You have to do things on your own. So well, that's an interesting experience that is making me explore that side of myself, which I've never done before. So, and it's also giving me that confidence that, oh, okay, I can do things. There are so many things I can do on my own as well. But also at the same time, like, because India being a country with vast diversity, I have to say, like, it's almost like, so how I describe India is like living in a country with 29 countries. It's like
Mhm.
every state has its own so many diversities, like like their regional dialects are there in every terms, language, food, festivals. So because of that factor, it is, I do consider it as it's a huge strength for us, because you're constantly working. Even when you're working in education, you have to think that how do I make sure that my classroom space is inclusive. So I remember, like, I'm remembering of this experience which I had, like, when I did my previous masters. I had to do my research internship, and I was teaching in a government school in Kerala, the state where I belong from. So I taught in a government school, and there were these few kids who were not from Kerala. Their families had migrated from a neighboring state. So they did not they could understand a little bit, our my mother tongue, like the first language that I speak is called Malayalam. They could understand a little bit, but they were not that good at it. But they could understand really well English. So while I was teaching, I had to constantly switch between English and Malayalam, so that that everybody feels included. Even they are also important for me.
Mhm.
So that's but it's challenging, it is. But there are scenarios, there are classrooms in India, like even within a classroom there might be children speaking like 5 to 6 languages at times. So the teacher has to figure out a way, okay, which language do I interact with children in. So it is not easy because of the contextual setting that we have in the country. And at times I do feel that people don't really realize about it. You have to understand the context. That's why I keep repeating a lot. Like even in my assignments when I write, like even in the classroom discussions we have, I understand we do have the tendency, oh, we have these set of challenges, we are not able to do well. But we have to understand where we come from, and what are the contextual specialities, or the particular, what is it about the context where we are from. So without understanding that, one can't really say that, okay, the system is not functioning well. So I think that was a major learning for me as well, like even after coming here. So
I
like
totally
even,
agree.
yeah, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree that that's such a important thing to see the context and the climate of where, like, the reason Finland is the way it is because it's cold and it's dark in the winter for 9 months, and then it's 3 months of sunlight, and so, but it's such a valuable thing to be able to see both. Just like you said, you came to
Yeah,
Finland, you learned so much about individualism, but you really appreciate the collectivist like the collectivism of
ism.
Indian culture. And actually, that's one big problem that Finnish students are struggling with right now is that they don't feel like they belong in school. And
Yeah,
it's so individualistic that kids don't want to go to school because they don't feel like they don't have, or maybe they have one or two friends, but even in their
yeah,
class, they don't feel like it's a unit. I remember in
yeah,
Taiwan, it's amazing because the classroom,
I
all of the,
know.
like, your class, your family, like everybody in the class, everybody in the class, and you're always together, and you guys are a
Yeah,
group, and it
yeah,
doesn't matter if you're just an individual because in the group you have this group identity. But in
yeah,
Finland, we don't have that, and that's such a shame because that's a
yeah,
really important aspect of being a human is like to be able
yeah,
to have an identity as a group and have this
yeah,
feeling of belonging and loyalty
yeah,
and
yeah,
being accepted. But a lot
yeah.
of students don't feel this, and so it's so funny that, like,
Mm.
people are like, oh, Finland is like the best and it's like educational heaven. And when you come here, you're just like, it's
Yep.
not. There's so many problems in this system that could be fixed if you brought a little bit of Indian system into it,
Yeah.
or Taiwanese system. This Asian culture, if you put a little bit of Asian culture in the Finnish system,
Yeah.
it would be
Yeah.
much better. And
Yeah.
actually, in
Yeah.
the Taiwanese system, if you put a little bit of Finnish culture in there, it
Yeah.
might be better.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think in education, we have to be finding this middle ground,
Yeah.
like a
Exactly. I think,
balance.
yeah, that's the word, like of, it's like we are at two different extremes. Like the Asian context is like in one end of the extreme, like the Nordic culture is like the other end. It's
Mhm.
like, I think finding that balance, it's so, so very important. And yeah, I think that was another. But I have to say that like there are things that I have begun to appreciate about, definitely about the Finnish culture. Like I think I did write about it, of um listening to one another. Like, oh my God, like I really appreciate the Finns so much, that they listen so well. And then it's like, you don't they, from what I've and from how much ever interaction I have had with the friends, like they listen to you really well, and they don't get into that defensive mode, like, oh no, that's not how it is, or this is how we are. But they're like, okay, they try to accept it. Well, this is how we are.
Mm.
So I think that's a very important learning that Asians also need to adopt. Like, and especially in India, I've seen that people just get defensive about, no, this is how we are, and I think that's not really appropriate, I think. So it's also important to listen to each other really well, and then, yeah, yeah. I think that was major learning for me, I have to say. So, yeah, I think,
Yeah, they're polar opposites, polar opposites. But it's such a nice thing to be able to go to these polar opposite places and to learn
yeah,
each other.
yeah,
There are places
yeah.
like I was just thinking when you were talking as well that I feel like American education system is kind of in between. Well, America is
Mm,
such a huge country,
true,
but
true.
eventually I had gone to middle school and high school in the US, and I
Yeah,
realized it is kind of a middle ground. They have
yeah,
this kind of more Finnish mindset of there is an
yeah,
individual, but they also have these standardized tests and a big focus on
yeah,
testing. And
yeah.
so, in my opinion, I actually really like the US educational system where I was grown
Mm,
around Washington.
mm. Okay.
They did a really good job of balancing these two things. So it's not the
Yeah,
extreme competition and it's not the extreme individualism.
yeah,
A
yeah.
little bit of both, which is nice.
Yeah, yeah, something to definitely, like, we really need to rethink on how we look at education, on competition, actually. Like, it's easier that, because we want to be better, we want to do well, and, because if you don't work hard, like you mentioned, like, because this whole idea of you have to get the best out of you, because that's the most prevalent culture. And then, but when you slightly think differently, oh, okay, competition does not really matter to me, or because it becomes like you are like the black sheep. Oh, this person is different and does not want to belong into the mainstream. So it becomes quite challenging when there is a mainstream culture. So, yeah, I think something definitely for us to think about.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
I've been thinking about a lot is, especially since I have two kids now, is one of the most
yeah,
important is your family culture. Like
yeah,
change most likely happens in your family. And even
yeah,
though uh, this culture, Asian education system might be really intense and high competition, but if the
yeah,
parents stress out their kids, if the parents
yeah,
accept it, they love their kids, they have high standards, but they still have warmth for their kids and
mm,
they accept them even if they don't do well or if they do well, but still
yeah,
expect they're going to do a good job. If you have these
mm,
parents, then the kids are much healthier. They're so healthy.
mm,
And so
yeah,
so I always think that, yeah, the Finnish system, you cannot take a Finnish system and put it into an Asian culture because
yeah,
cultures don't match. But the like
yes,
Taiwanese friends of mine, they would say that, oh, just bring the Finnish education system here and start your own school. I'm thinking you won't accept it. Once your kids, their grades start going down, they might be very happy, but their grades are going
Yeah.
down. You could be like, teach me, get my kids' grades up. And so, and so the family culture
Yeah.
is so important. The family culture might be the most
Yeah.
aspect in the student's
Yeah.
life, not the
Yeah.
educational,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
family.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I guess that was quite a few interesting
Well, I don't
reflections
want
for
to.
exchange. I know exchange of culture, and because I think, well, even you have been in an Asian context, and you are from the Nordic region, and then I'm from I belong to the Asian context, and then right now I'm exploring the Nordic. So it's like. This is the cultural exchange that we need more, I think. So, yeah, and it would be nice if we can further continue with this conversation and in the coming videos that I would make probably. So I
Yeah,
guess
I
we
mean,
can.
it was lovely talking with you, and I'm sorry I kind of jumped to lots of different points because I'm excited about so
No
many different
worries.
things.
No
But
worries. I'm sure my friends and colleagues would be so excited
I hope
to
so.
have met you,
You can
at least online.
tell them to ask some questions, and then we can discuss it in the future if they would like to.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
sure, sure. All right. All right then. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.